Hello and welcome to another edition of the OpIndia Recap. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you very much for watching. We appreciate you. Okay guys, just a little bit of housekeeping really quick. If you are new to this channel, if this is the first episode of OpIndia that you're watching, please make sure to subscribe to the OpIndia YouTube channel down below if you enjoyed today's episode. And if you have watched this before and if you haven't subscribed already, please go ahead and make sure to subscribe. Okay, so I want to start today's episode with a George Orwell quote that I think fits today's theme really well. He said, "The most effective way to destroy people is to deny and obliterate their own understanding of their history." And I think this applies really well in the case of all of these leftist scholars and these postmodernist scholars, whether in India or in the West, who have been on this crusade over the past few decades to denigrate India's history. I've already done videos on a couple of such academics in my own YouTube channel that you can check out. The link will be provided in the description below. But today I want to talk to you about another one of these scholars that has recently gained, let's say, notoriety about a few comments that she made about Lord Ram. Her name is Audrey Truschke, and she has gained fame in the West and infamy in India by doing the two things that will make you the darling of the academic circles in India or the West. Number one is denigrate Hindus and their culture and their history. That's a surefire hit. And number two, paint oppressive Islamic rulers or oppressive Islamic history in a benevolent light. So recently she came into the news and recently she caught the attention of a lot of people when she loosely translated, in her own words, certain passages from the Valmiki Ramayana. So this is what she essentially tweeted out. She said, "For anyone unfamiliar with these episodes, in Valmiki's telling, I am loosely translating here. During the Agni Pariksha, Sita basically tells Ram that he's a misogynist pig and uncouth. And during the golden deer incident, Sita accuses Lakshman of lusting after her and setting up Ram." So Truschke pointed to verses 5, 7, and 14 in the Sarg, Canto 6.104, along with providing the complete translations, not by her. She was not the one that translated this. She actually provided the translation that was provided by Goldman, and Van Newton for the verses 5 to 16 in the Sarg that she is quoting. So Nityanand Mishra actually wrote a fantastic article that I cannot recommend highly enough, that you should really go and check out in the description below. He wrote an article where he actually translates this from Sanskrit, from the Valmiki Ramayana, and explains the verses that she is quoting. And he completely debunks her theory. So I'd really recommend you go check that article out. I'm just going to summarize a little bit of what he said. So he said that Sita is visibly in sorrow, which is shok, and some extent in anger, which is krodh, when she is speaking to Ram in the verses 6.104.5 to 6.104.16. Now, her sorrow is of course well established in the way she is speaking, or in the way she is described as being sullied by tears and with words that were indistinct. What is important to also understand is the way that she is addressing Ram throughout these passages. So throughout this whole speech that she is giving Ram, she is also addressing Ram as Veer, or O brave one, Mahabahu, or O one with strong arms, Prabhu, or O Lord, Narashardul, or O the best among men, or Manad, or O one who bestows honor. So she's addressing Ram in these terms, and even though she is, upset with him, it is definitely a massive stretch to say that she's addressing Ram in these terms that I just described 5 seconds ago, and then she goes ahead and calls Ram a misogynistic pig. It just doesn't really add up. This kind of behavior isn't really reminiscent of Sita. This kind of behavior is more reminiscent of more of a postmodernist person and their habit of just attributing the worst intentions and calling the worst names to somebody that they do not agree with. So these words don't really appear to be the words of Sita. These words appear to be the words of Audrey Truschke that she's putting into the mouth of Sita. Even Goldman, that she quoted her translation from, even he wrote in an email that he found the translations extremely disturbing, but perhaps not unexpected, when he learned that Truschke has used such inappropriate language and passed it off as coming from Valmiki himself. So from this instance itself, you can kind of get an idea of where she stands. Like, I'm not taking away the fact that she has done her research or the fact that she's well read. What I am saying, however, is that she's so intent on proving that Hinduism was this backward, oppressive culture, that she's now just resorting to putting words into characters' mouths just to prove her point. She actually rose to prominence, or again, infamy, initially when she wrote a book about how Aurangzeb wasn't really the tyrant that he is painted to be. He wasn't really this fundamentalist, radical Islamic bigot that history has shown him to be. He's actually a nice guy that has just been misunderstood. She's also one of those scholars who says that India was neither Hindu nor a nation. This is a very popular line for these leftist scholars to use, that India is not even a country, it has never really been a country, and it doesn't really have a Hindu character. So when Kalidas was writing about the land that stretches from the ocean up to the Himalayas, he was obviously talking about, you guessed it, New Zealand. And when Peshwa Bajirao was talking about planting the Maratha flag in Delhi and creating a Hindu Padshahi in India, he was obviously talking about, you guessed it again, Ecuador. And she also talks about how, she faces challenges being an academic and she faces bullying being an academic. But unfortunately, what she doesn't realize is whatever bullying or challenges that she might have faced, they don't add up anywhere or anywhere close to the challenges that people that don't identify themselves as left-leaning academics face. For example, you take somebody like Rajiv Malhotra, you take somebody like Konrad Elst. These academics have faced way worse challenges and way more walls that they've had to surmount to get their work in the public eye. So in the book that she wrote about, Aurangzeb just being a misunderstood man and how Aurangzeb was actually a good man that was just trying to run his kingdom efficiently. So before we get into the nice things that she says about Aurangzeb and how Aurangzeb was misunderstood, let's go through Aurangzeb's CV, so to say, just a little bit. So in 1679, Aurangzeb imposed the jizya, or the poll tax, on non-Muslims, which had been removed for over 100 years. In 1669, he ordered the provincial governors to destroy all the temples and schools of the infidels and to utterly put down their teachings and religious practices. The famous Vishwanath temple at Banaras was also razed in 1669. The grandest shrine of Mathura, the Keshav Rai's temple, was also destroyed in January 1670, and a mosque was built on this site. And this is when Aurangzeb really shows what a nice guy and what a benevolent king he really was. He ordered that the idols of this temple should be brought to Agra and buried under the steps of the Jahanara mosque, so that every time a Muslim goes to pray into the mosque, he is stepping on those idols that were destroyed. Again, he also destroyed the Somnath temple, the famous Somnath temple of Gujarat. In the Rajput War of 1679-80, around 240 temples were destroyed in Mewar alone. All Hindus except Rajputs were forbidden to carry any arms or ride elephants, palkis, or Arab and Persian horses. Custom duties again were abolished on all Muslims and doubled on Hindus. So again, it'll be interesting to see how she justifies all of these things that Mr. Aurangzeb did in his time. So first of all, she starts out and she says that there's no real Hindu identity. It's not even an Indian word. It's a Persian word that was given to the inhabitants of India. And it is only during the British time, or towards the end of the British time, that this whole Hindu identity started to take shape. Not only is that patently untrue, but she also contradicts it further down the book. So she first talks about how Hindu isn't even a concept, and then she talks about how Hindu participation in Aurangzeb's court actually increased. So if Hindu isn't really a concept, then where did this Hindu participation come from? Who are you talking about when you're talking about Hindus? Are you talking about Rajputs? Are you talking about Brahmins? Are you talking about the Vaishya class? Who exactly it is that you're talking about? And she uses this reason as well, that Aurangzeb actually had more Hindus in his court than other kings. So obviously he must have been really nice towards Hindus. But she herself writes something further down the book that explains the real reason why Aurangzeb took more Hindus into the court than other kings. So she says that faced with life among people that they viewed as repulsive. So a lot of these Mughals who came from Central Asia, a lot of those people did not want to go into the Deccan and did not want to go into the south because they themselves were repulsed by the darker skinned Indian people. So the Deccan was considered as a punishment posting for Mughal expatriates. So this is what increased the percentage of Hindus that were inducted. A lot of Mughals refused to go into the Deccan, and that is why Hindus were inducted to go into the Deccan and take care of affairs. She also says that the jizya was actually put upon the Hindus not to oppress them, but to actually generate some extra revenue for the Islamic clerics and to generate more employment for them. And isn't that just a fantastic argument? If you really wanted to generate revenue, you should have put the tax on Muslims as well. Why didn't you put the tax on Muslims? And what about the religious police that Aurangzeb also instated? The Mutasibs, which is very similar to the Mutaween, or the religious police in Saudi Arabia. So Truschke said that the emperor did this to ensure an ethical and secure kingdom. And if you really think about the arguments that she's making, what does this argument remind you of? There are some other people on this planet that make arguments like these. And what does that remind you of? I don't know what it reminds you of, but it definitely reminds me of the arguments that some of these clerics make in Saudi Arabia. That, the taxes are levies just to increase revenue, and women are not allowed to drive for their own good because they're no good at stuff like that. And they're supposed to be kept in burqas because, again, they are properties that need to be protected because, of course, women can't really take care of themselves. And again, the Mutaween, or the oppressive religious police, is present in Saudi Arabia to, of course, ensure a more secure and a more ethical kingdom. And not to oppress people. Your arguments are the exact same arguments that the clerics in Saudi Arabia are making. I mean, that's a red flag right there. And then she also talks about, temple destruction. And she says that, temple destruction isn't really something new. Even Hindu kings used to loot temples from the kingdoms that they fought when Hindu kings were fighting other Hindu kings. And they would often take the deities or the statues from inside the temples and bring it and install them in their own temples. And sure, I'll give you that. But here's the thing. Looting of a temple and destruction of one odd temple, there's a big difference between that and then destroying thousands upon thousands of temples in order to crush and destroy the indigenous culture and the indigenous population of the country. And also these temples were destroyed because it was done to send a message to the indigenous population that your time is up and that your culture is about to come to an end. Prime example of this, and I know this is not in Aurangzeb's time, but it follows the same logic. A prime example of this is the Quwwatul Islam in mosque in Delhi. If you look at the Quwwatul Islam mosque, it was destroyed after creating what I think is around 26 temple complexes. And then the mosque was built on the area where those temple complexes stood. And the mosque was called Quwwatul Islam Mosque. And Quwwatul Islam means the power of Islam. So it was not built out of some benevolent purpose like this is what happens. It was built for a particular purpose. It was built to destroy India's indigenous culture and to send them a message that your time is about to come to an end. So again, all of these arguments that she's making, they don't really make sense. They don't really stand up to proper scrutiny. And even the grand dragon, the great big daddy of the seculars in India, Pandit Nehru, even he said that when Aurangzeb began to oppose the syncretism of earlier Mughal rulers and suppress it and to function more as a Muslim than as an Indian ruler, the Mughal Empire began to break up. So when the paragon of secularism and socialism and leftism in India, Nehru, is saying that maybe Aurangzeb was a little bit too much, maybe don't defend him. So, her arguments don't really add up. Whether it's to do with that whole quote about Sri Ram, whether it's to do with her defense for Aurangzeb, her arguments don't really add up. And she says that, people troll her online for expressing her opinions and for being a free thinker. But she does the same exact thing. She often posts comments on Twitter that are designed specifically for Hindu baiting. She often writes this egregious stuff that she knows is going to rile up Hindus. I mean, imagine writing this stuff about anyone related to Islam and see what happens. And again, I also want to say one thing to people who disagree with her, is that it is okay to disagree with her because it is right to disagree with her because what she's writing is wrong. But at the same time, we have to make sure that we keep the discourse civil. If you abuse her, if you say nasty things to her, then you make her the victim. Then she gets to play the victim game, and then she gets to gain all of that sympathy that she doesn't really deserve. So please, my advice to you is keep it civil and counter her with facts and counter her with logic, which there is an abundance of against her. Counter her with those things and completely discredit her argument in a way that nobody takes her seriously. That's the way that you take these academics truly down. She's sitting in a university in the West and she's spouting all this against Hindus, and the kind of logic that she's using, that Aurangzeb was this benevolent leader and a misunderstood person and he was just trying to do the right thing. Imagine if that same logic is applied to the slavery in the West, because it can be. It's the same exact logic that she's applying. Imagine if she applies that same logic to slavery, that, oh, the Europeans, when they came here, they were just trying to do the right thing. They were just trying to make a living. They were all just nice people. And slavery was just a byproduct of it. Imagine that logic being used. She's going to be crucified. Again, like I said, Hindus tend to be fair game, but not anymore, because there is an ecosystem for dharma being created. And we are at the forefront of it, and we will continue to rebut, and we will continue to fight back every time these so-called scholars and academics make these strange and stupid accusations and these strange and stupid statements. So we will be at the forefront. Again, guys, thank you very much for watching today's episode of The Recap. If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to give it a thumbs up. Please make sure to leave a like. It helps the channel out. It helps us out a lot. Make sure to subscribe to the show's channel again if you enjoyed today's video as well. And if you think that this video can help open some minds, make sure to share this video on social media as well. Again, guys, thank you very much for watching today's video. I will see you again for the next episode of The Recap. And until then, stay happy, stay healthy, and I'll see you soon.